A lot of people, they hear, Mom, I'm bored. And we immediately feel a sense of fear, maybe guilt, because we think, oh, shoot, I should have signed them up for that extra enrichment. Or, oh, I should be on the floor playing with them. I should be enriching them. We immediately want to say, you have a whole playroom full of toys. How can you be bored? Or we start listing things for them to do. But I want to argue that when kids say, but I'm bored, they're not asking for what to do. It means I feel really uncomfortable. I don't know what the next thing is, and I need some connection in figuring that out.
Welcome to the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Perda. As a marriage coach who's married with 3 kids, I know how much parenthood could change a marriage. If flirting, laughing, and having fun together feels like a thing of the past, then I'm here to teach you that marriage doesn't have to feel so hard with your parents, and your marriage can thrive even when you're in the season of raising kids. Whether you're in a good place in your marriage and you just want to continue growing together, or you're wondering if you even like your spouse anymore, this podcast has something for you. Join me here each week as we dive into what it takes to help your marriage grow, and maybe even do a 180. You'll learn ways to handle conflict better, bring that spark back into your relationship, as well as learn how to improve other areas of your life from my lovely guest experts. Are you ready for the next stage of your life and marriage? Let's dive in. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. Today, as we're recording, it is Lunar New Year, and I'm so excited just to kick off another kind of like milestone of the annual year. A great time to reflect, a great time to kind of just like take a look at how are we doing things? Are we liking the way that it's working out, or do we need to reassess? And so much of motherhood is kind of dealing with, how did I grow up? How did my parents raise me? How did they spend time with me? Versus what are people doing today? What are the parenting experts saying to do today? And kind of like coming to terms of what we want to do with that information, right? Context from our upbringing and newfound studies about like what is best practices, which by the way changes with every generation, right? And I know that for us, it has been shown that we as parents, me, like I'm millennial and maybe even Gen X, but definitely younger generations, as we're becoming parents, we're actually more present than parents from generations past. And there's this concept that I want to talk about in a little bit with our guest here that kind of like shows and proves why we're so much more overstimulated than parents in the past. And I'm so excited to talk about this with our guest here, Lizzie Assa. She is incredible. She wrote a book about letting our kids be bored. And I know that that's probably like one of the least favorite things that we hear our kids say next to what's for dinner is I'm bored, right? And so I'm super excited to dive into this with you, Lizzie. And I'm sure that all the listeners out there are like, wait, what? You want our kids to be bored? And no, it's not because we want you annoyed, right? It's that there's power to it. And so before we dive into that, Lizzie, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm so excited to talk about this with you and learn from you. For those who are new to you, can you please share with them where you live, how old your kids are, and what led you to write this book?
Sure. So, hi, everyone. I'm Lizzie Assa. I am the founder of the Workspace for Children, which is a website and a blog, and I'm also over on Substack. And my real goal is to empower parents to do less so their kids can play more. And my new book, But I'm Bored, Discover the Power of Independent Play to Raise Confident, Resilient Kids, is out now. And it's really about setting up your home and your life in a way that feels really aligned to who you are, which is what I loved what you were saying in the intro about really checking in with, are we where we want to be, or are we going along with, what the latest expert says, but it doesn't fit my values? And I think when we can really dive into the power of independent play, we learn so much more about what makes our kids tick, what's important to them. And also, we get a lot more time back for ourselves, which is really important so that we can show up the way we want to.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's hit rewind. For me, the way I grew up is I barely remember my parents really playing with me, right? They were not on the ground playing imaginary play with me. Maybe when I was a little baby and it was like cute and they could just do simple things. But for me, my greatest memory of playing with them was like after dinner, we'd play cards before going to bed, or I would play video games with my dad. But it wasn't like what I think is being promoted now, with especially through like the toddler phase and like the younger ages. And so for me, when I had kids, I'm like, what do I do with you?
Yeah.
Right? Like the sense of imaginary play is incredibly, well, not so much now, but like it was incredibly uncomfortable for me where I just kind of like freeze. And my husband had a very different upbringing. And it might be because my parents were immigrants and he's Caucasian. So his family's been here for, I don't know, forever. And like I would see my mother-in-law playing with kids, like my stepson at the time. And it's like, how do you do that? Like you find joy in doing that. I don't find joy in doing that. And so how about you? What was your upbringing like?
Well, I would say, Michelle, you are more like most.
Okay.
I think it's, I think you are like most parents. My upbringing was actually very playful. My mom really inspired me so much because I'm one of five. My mom did not play with us. She was very busy raising five kids, but what she did that was so smart is that she really set up the environment in a way that we can entertain ourselves. And boy, did she expect us to entertain ourselves. And so, we had a little art table with stickers and paper and things like that. And it was the 80s. So like no one really had that. But my mom really understood the power of play in, gaining time back for herself. And I really took that and embraced it big time when I had my own kids. And I have a master's in early childhood. I taught nursery school for a long time. So I also just really understood that concept. But, I was talking to a toddler parent who was saying, I freeze up. I don't know what to do when my kid says, Mama, play with me. And what I told her was that actually makes a ton of sense, right? Because play is how kids make sense of their worlds. And especially young children, like toddlers, they are rapidly assimilating new information about their world, and then they process it through play. So when we play with them, imaginary, we really don't know what to do because we are not in their mind. And so I try to help parents to really think about their role in their child's play instead of being the entertainer, really just being there to anchor the play, to ground the play, but to keep putting the lead back on their child because the autonomy that they have in their own play, the way they process through play is the most important thing about it.
Okay. So it's almost like we're the facilitator.
Yes.
More so. Okay.
I like to describe it as sort of a mirror.
Ooh.
So if your toddler comes to you and says, Mommy, you be the puppy, our instinct would probably be to get in and start barking and being funny and leading the game. But what I want parents to do is to be a mirror and say, oh, a puppy? Tell me what the puppy does. Where should the puppy go in the game? Just keep putting it back on them because the most important thing is their leadership in play. And that does two things. One, it tells them, I know how to be in charge of my own play, which is amazing for independent play. It builds that play confidence. And the second thing it does is tell them, wow, my grown-up believes that my ideas are important. So it builds confidence in that way also for our kids.
I love that. And it creates like those pathways for them to be creative instead of just like, I feel like what I don't want to call it a mistake, but I feel like because most of my generation's parents, they weren't there physically as often as parents are today, that we feel like, oh, we want our kids to struggle less, right? Like obviously every generation wants their kids to struggle less than however they did. And for us, it was like, okay, well, you have a question, let me answer that. So then it becomes just like, we become the go-to rather than how we grew up. We're like, well, I'm going to go figure it out. I'm going to go check out the dictionary, like when they were physical books.
Right.
Or I'm going to go check out the encyclopedia and kind of figure it out. Whereas now it's like ChatGPT is great, but like for younger generations, that just reinforces that they don't need to critically think or use their brain in any meaningful way.
And that makes play even more valuable for in early childhood
Yeah.
because that is where critical thinking skills are built. That is where, executive function, frustration tolerance, leadership, all of those things are grown out of play. And the more we can lean into that, oftentimes parents really want to optimize their kids' childhood. And I get that. We want what's best for our kids, but inadvertently by signing them up for the extra coaching and the extra enrichment and scheduling their lives, we're taking away the thing that's most important, which is the time and space for them to lead their own play.
Oh, that's so powerful. And I know like we're noticing a really decreased sense of grit in kids
Yes.
these days. Would you say that's related?
I would absolutely say that's related. And the research will show that, college kids today are falling apart more than ever. They are calling their parents for every little setback. They're panicking when they have a small failure. And those are play problems to me. Those are things that when kids have the chance to play in early childhood, they are developing a sense of self. They're developing a sense of, I know how to get started before someone tells me what to do. A lot of our kids today are really scheduled. They're in that extra enrichment, extra tutoring, club sports, and some of those things are wonderful, right? But there needs to be a balance. And when our kids don't have time to be bored, sit in that uncomfortable feeling and figure out what to do next, what happens when they're grown-ups? What happens when they're in college and they have so much extra time on their hands? What happens when they go to work and they want to be that leader? You want someone to work for you that knows how to have an idea before you get them started, right? Those are all skills that kids are practicing through play.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the listeners know this, but I am from California, the Bay Area specifically, and I relocated to the Atlanta, Georgia area almost 2 years now. And one of the biggest highlights of us moving here is that life here is just so much slower. And yes, there's a lot of people involved in activities and extracurriculars, but also the kids are out playing together after school. Like, I thought this was like the most amazing but like weird thing that our kids did was like one day, I think it was like a spring day, they had taken a sled, gone to our neighbor across the street, and started sledding down their grassy lawn. And I was like, that is so weird. That's for snow, but like that's from my rigid thinking, like that item is used for this, but they were having a blast. And I'm like, okay, that's exactly what childhood should
That's
be.
right.
They were bored. They had an idea and they're like, let's run with it. Oh my gosh, it's fun. Let's keep doing this.
Yep. And let me tell you, even if, say they tried the sled and it didn't work, they probably would have come up with another idea. And that's so powerful for kids because when they're scheduled all the time, unfortunately, they don't have that opportunity because it's structured, it's rigid. You're following the rules and you're doing what you're told. And yes, that is a time and a place, but so much more so does unstructured time and play for kids.
Yeah. And with that structured time, you kind of have to hold yourself together, right? They've got school already where they have to hold it together, and then they go to this next thing that they have to hold it together. And I really think that there's so much value in them just like unwinding through structureless play. Like if they don't want to do the thing that their friends don't want to do, they can come home and like, whatever. But like when my kids, I don't know if this is right or wrong, maybe you could tell me, but like when my kids tell me they're bored and they don't know what to do, I'll like say, well, there's a lot of things around the house that you can help me with if you'd like. And then they immediately go away and find something to do.
Yeah, that's a pretty common thing to say. And I definitely do that sometimes too. But let's unpack that for a second, because I think a lot what happens is, a lot of people, they hear, Mom, I'm bored. And we immediately feel a sense of fear, maybe guilt, because we think, oh, shoot, I should have signed them up for that extra enrichment. Or, oh, I should have, I should be on the floor playing with them. I should be enriching them, right? But what I really want parents to hear when their kids say I'm bored is I want them to first really give themselves a pat on the back, because in today's society where kids don't have the opportunity to be bored, you have done it. You have created that pocket of time. And that right there is a huge win. Now, how are we going to respond to but I'm bored? Because it matters. I think we immediately want to say, you have a whole playroom full of toys. How can you be bored? Or we start listing things for them to do. But I want to argue that when kids say, but I'm bored, they're not asking for what to do. It doesn't mean I don't know what to do. It means I feel really uncomfortable. I don't know what the next thing is, and I need some connection in figuring that out. Our connection grounds them, gets them back into their body, and then they can start to use their mind. And so what I like to say to kids when they're bored is, oh, you're bored? That makes sense. You're used to people telling you what to do next, and no one's telling you what to do right now. It makes sense. Like you don't know what to do next. Then pause. Even that small entry can be so massive because kids think you're going to start to yell at them or list for them or say, hey, here's my phone or here's an iPad. So they really think about that. And then depending on your kid, I like parents to sort of help them think through. I like to say, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I can help you think it through if you want. I might remind them of a time. I remember last week when you were playing with your toy cars and you were really upset because I said you had to put them away because we had to go to the supermarket. I wonder if you want to set that up again now. You could even bring it into my office and set it up on the floor. So then you're offering them sort of that body doubling. You're there with them. You're not playing with them, but you are right next to them. So you can sort of dip in and out, but it still belongs to them. Mm-hmm. So it's really going to be about scaffolding how they come up with ideas.
Oh, I love that because you're also helping them build awareness of what they enjoy, which, I mean, people our age are still working on becoming more self-aware. So I love that you're sharing your observations like, hey, I kind of noticed you had a great time, or you look like you had a great time doing this. Do you want to do that? One thought that came to mind was even reflecting back like, hey, okay, I hear you're bored. Are you looking to be creative right now? Are you looking to make something? Are you looking to hang out with friends? What of those options sounds good to you? Like, is that something that could still kind of get the gears turning without giving them the answer?
I think it really depends on your kid. I'm thinking if I had a tween, something like that would be great. Yeah. But if I had a toddler or a preschooler, then I know, they're really developmentally driven to say no.
Sure.
They're really just learning to step into their autonomy. So anything you list is going to be a no.
Yeah.
So what I might do for them is, and I talk about this in the book, is called setting up play pockets around your home. And that's really just starts with you noticing, what do your kids actually love to play with? What does it look like when they are successfully playing? What are they using? Are they using markers and paper, or are they more drawn to magnetic tiles? Do they love Bluey figurines, or are they a kid who's really into building with blocks? Start to note those things and pull those things to the front of your playroom. Even go as far as creating a play pocket, which is taking some of those toys and putting them in small areas around your house. So maybe a drawer in your kitchen, maybe a cupboard in your bathroom, places where you are going to be, where your child might be nudging you to come play with them. But that gives them the opportunity to play with something they're already successful at and interested in and be near you. So you're really using the environment to allow them to create their own play.
Okay. So I know you work with kids, I believe you said all the way up to 12. Am I remembering that right?
Mm-hmm.
So you address the toddlers. What about like school age kids? So my youngest is in kindergarten. So she's needing more parental playtime than say someone like my 9-year-old or even dare say my 16-year-old, right? He's like off in his own world. But like, how do you change it with their age range?
Sure. So the first thing I'm going to say is even teenagers still need to play.
Oh, absolutely.
I have something that I like to call coffee table toys, and those are just like little magnetic blocks or little fidget toys, and I keep them in bowls on all the coffee tables in my house. And everyone who comes over, whether it is my son who's a freshman in college, who's 18, his friends were over break. And when I tell you their phones went down and they just started playing with these rubber squigs, and it went on and on and on, to my 16-year-old who will flop down after doing homework and just dig her hand into the bowl and start playing with something. And then her mouth is open and we're connecting and she's talking. So, don't underestimate a great coffee table toy. It's a play pocket in itself. But I want to also help kids, so say your 5-year-old is really needing that one-on-one time from you. There are lots of ways to connect with our kids that isn't necessarily getting down on the floor and playing with them. I love to include kids in the work I'm already doing. So having them, peel carrots next to me while I peel potatoes, or, folding laundry together. But instead of filling that time and space with who'd you sit next to at school? What did you do with this? Did you wash your lunchbox? Is really just pausing and being quiet, letting them fill the space or not, because that being together is oftentimes enough. You could start to even say, hey, I noticed you've been so into this new show lately. Do you want to tell me about that or not? Really let them, again, take the lead in that connection. And you'll see when you do this consistently, kids play independently more because their bucket is already filled.
Yeah. A huge question actually came to mind as you were sharing that about like not asking them about their day. And, I don't remember my parents ever asking me about my day, or like knowing very minimally about how my life was as an individual. And I feel like with our generation, we're like, I want to know all the things like while you're
Yes.
gone. I could see it as soon as my teenager became like, he went into middle school. It was like completely like, don't ask me anything ever. But of course, as parents, we want to formulate that strong connection where if they are in trouble or if they're curious about something, that they come to us. So it sounds like not asking those questions might be more effective when we kind of just like show them that we're here for them in whatever way they want us to be, instead of us kind of like what could be perceived as prying.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, of course, very nuanced. And it really varies with developmental stage. One way I really connect with teens is that I know developmentally that they are really clued in, they're really connected to their friends as they should be. And so for me, I really want to convey, your people are my people. And so I am going to always put out the extra snacks. I'm always going to say, hey, on Mondays, do you want to invite a friend to dinner? It's nothing fancy. We're eating on paper plates, but I'm just kind of continually peppering into them. What's important to you is important to dad and I. And that kind of builds that fabric underneath of connection. What it also does is puts you in the periphery of their life. So you don't have to be involved in every little thing. When they're teens, they want that autonomy and that privacy, but it does put you in the room. And so you are kind of viewing what the dynamics look like. So they know you understand. Even simple things, as much as I don't love spending all our money on Starbucks, is, saying yes when they ask, can we go to Starbucks, or going for a ride without an agenda. Things like that go such a long way with teens. With littles, you know what is so powerful when you want to know about their day at school? Put an empty dollhouse on your kitchen table with just a few little people figures. You will find out so much about what school feels like for them, and don't be alarmed, if the teacher's hitting them or any of those things. That doesn't mean that's what's happening, but it does mean, hey, they might be thinking about like the power dynamic. But you will learn a lot about what they're processing and thinking about school and their life just by putting out a dollhouse. And then you can say to them, hey, I noticed when you were playing, it sounded like the little girl in your game was so worried, and pause and see what they say. Because a lot of times they'll say, yeah, and they'll start telling you.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Okay. So kind of just like emphasizing creating opportunities, but not forcing them.
Mm-hmm.
Love that.
And, oftentimes even think about like the bath. Bath time is something I feel like most toddler preschool parents could really relate to. But I think what we do, I mean, I know I did this when my kids were little, is, we'd been working all day and not connecting with them and doing all this stuff. And so you get them in the bath and you think, you know what, I better optimize this time. I'm going to start quizzing them on their letters. I'm going to start playing every game with them. We try to pack it all in. But I think what's even more valuable than that is to pause that instinct and just sit quietly and be an active and engaged presence and let them lead. When you can do those things and practice those things consistently, you see better behavior, more connection, because kids are wired to want to lead. They are wired to want to be in charge. And so much of their life doesn't allow for that. So when we can build that back in at home, it's really valuable.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that every child is different, right? And
Yes.
every family is different. So you kind of have to
Yes.
take your whole unit into
Yes.
consideration. And so for us, we've decided that 3 days of activities for each child is like max, because I want them to have
Yep.
at least 1 to 2 days during the weekday, in addition to the weekend, to like just do whatever. Like, obviously handle your stuff for school, but like outside of that, and helping out with family chores, like I want you to just do
Yes.
whatever. But I know that like my daughter, if she could, again, she's 5, not aware of how everything works, if she could, she would sign up for every single activity that she thinks is fun.
Yes.
And as her parent, I don't want to be running around because I'm
No.
going to get burned out. I'm going to be cranky. I'm going to be blowing up on people. But also, I don't want her to burn out and start lashing out or having meltdowns at home. And so, how do we kind of find that balance, especially with our kids who are really adamant about, I want to
Yeah.
stay active and I have a lot of energy to burn? How do we find that
I
way?
love that. I love that question. There's a chapter in my book called Understanding the Culture of Your Family, and it really walks you through sort of some reflective questions for both you and your child about what feels most important to you and how can you kind of weave those together. But at the end of the day, we are the adults in charge, and so it is our job to protect our kids' downtime and schedule our kids' downtime in the same way we schedule the enrichment, the tutor, and the soccer. So I think it's really okay to say, that's amazing that you want to try all those things. Let's talk about what the most important one is this time, but let me write down your other ideas. Let me honor your other ideas so that next time signups come around, I can ask you, oh, is this still one that you want? Or are you thinking maybe you're more excited about this next one? So you really want to honor her wants and needs, but still show up as the grown up that's in charge, because the truth of the matter is, like, you know what's best for your child.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we have been fully on board with like, okay, yeah, you kind of have a lot of stuff going on right now. If you want to replace any of those things, we can talk about that. And then it
Yeah.
just doesn't go anywhere, which is fine. But then on the other end of things, I have another child who's like the complete opposite. He doesn't want to sign up for anything. And I'm like, okay, I get that. And there's value to being in a group setting where you're learning
Yes,
things and having a
that's
coach
right.
provide you feedback and you're
And part
improving.
of a community. You're
Yes.
part of a community, and that is very important. I actually once heard someone refer to their child who always wants to stay home as their house cat. And I
Yes.
just kind of loved that. I loved that. Yeah. And again, it's sort of the same thing, right? It's saying, I really want to honor your need to be at home, to putter around, to tinker, to relax. And also, I know it's really valuable to be an active member of our community. So let's think about how we can get you to do that in a way that feels best to you.
Yeah. Okay. So I love that you emphasize community. I'm curious to kind of pick your brain about this, because for us, it's about being physically active in some way. Like, he gets to choose what he wants to try. But after going for, I don't know, a couple of months, almost like clockwork, he's like, I don't like this. I don't want to go. And he'll like dig his heels, but it's like, you chose this. Okay, what do you want to choose instead? And then we'll go down the line of options. And he's like, I don't want to do any of those. Like,
Yeah.
buddy, you still got to like be healthy and move your body. You don't need to be doing something every single day, but like, let's stick with something so that, again, like those characteristics that come with being part of a sports team, or even just
Hmm.
working closely with someone for individual sports, there's value
Yeah,
to that. And I don't know
there
how
is.
to handle.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like to me, what I would want to do is to, one, really get curious.
Mm-hmm.
So I would really allow him to complain and moan and whine without anyone saying, but what about this? But this is really important. But dad and I think this, but really giving them the floor to think about, to really let it out, right? Sometimes kids just want to be seen and heard, and that's enough for them to then move on and do the thing. The other piece is, then once they are, you could come back to it later. So I would say, hey, I was thinking so much about how you don't like X part of going to soccer, and this Y part just like, oh, it's such a drag to you. I get that. It doesn't feel good. Really reflect back that you were listening and you can honor that. And then you could say, and it's really important value in our family that we move our body, this many days, or it's a really important value in our family that we're part of a community. Can you help me brainstorm? And maybe you're going to think of something that we haven't signed up for. Let's sit down together and brainstorm some ways that we can plug these things in without it having to be soccer or without it having to be baseball. But really, again, what you're doing is kind of putting the lead back on them, letting it come from him instead of it being like a top-down thing of more like, we're a team. These are the values our family hold. Yes, I am the adult in charge. So I do have, the final say. You're allowed to complain about it, but still, I have the final say. But I really want to hear a lot of ideas. And let's do this over a couple of days. Let's like really think this through. And maybe, I'm going to think about my friend's son, he's very similar to you. And I was having a conversation with her about, I wonder if they have some ideas. Maybe he can come over and, we can really talk through this. Because that, again, also gives back that sense of community, that sense of I'm not alone in this, but I can still honor my feelings.
Yeah.
Like we can learn so much about our kids when we can give them the floor to really talk without letting our fear or our need to jump in and control because we're worried about something get in the way.
Totally. And it's so easy as a parent to kind of just like future cast, like what might happen if this doesn't.
Oh yeah. Because also as I'm sitting here saying this to you, I also like, let's all be very aware here that, when my kids do that, sometimes I'm like, yeah, you can complain. Let's talk it through. And other times I'm like, really? Because I just paid $400 for that.
Exactly.
And guess what? You're doing it. So, you're not going to be able to do this all the time. I'm not able to do this all the time. But that's just the thinking that I will come back to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've tried so many different things with him. And we're still kind of like in the trenches trying to figure it out. But yeah, hopefully we'll figure something out sooner rather than later.
Let me also tell you, Michelle, like so many people, how old is he?
He's 9.
Yeah. So a lot of people, will be like, my kid has to find their thing. And it's not our job as parents to find our kids' thing. It's really not. And I know, I've definitely tried to take that on myself multiple times, even though I dig deep into research. I wrote a book about being bored and still, my fear or guilt can get ahead of me. And I will start thinking about that. I'm going to tell you a super quick story, but my oldest, who quit every team sport he ever did because all he wanted to do was tinker and play in the backyard and take apart bikes and put them back together. And, eventually by the time I think he was 7 or 8, we really honored that and allowed for that. And today he's a college freshman. He's running Division I in the Big Ten at Purdue, and he's studying aviation, which is all he ever wanted to do as a little boy, on the soccer field was staring up at the patterns of the planes. And, I kept thinking all through middle school and like upper elementary, like, oh my God, I need to help him find his thing. Like, how is he going to have friends? How is he going to be part of the community if he's, and those were the messy middle, that was very real, but we still trusted and let him find it on his own time. And boy, did he ever. But the moral of that story is not that your kid has to excel and run, at an elite level. It's that your kid needs to take the time. They deserve to take the time that they need to figure that out on their own, because when they do, it's so much more powerful than being pushed into something.
I'm so glad I brought that up because I'm like, oh, I feel so conflicted because obviously I don't want to force him into doing anything, which is totally how I was raised. Like, you're doing this. This is, I don't care how you feel about it. You're going. And you kind of just like learn to suck it up. And like, well, I don't want him to have to suck it up and feel like he has no control over his life, but also, hi, you said you wanted to do this and we put over money. So.
And the tricky part about 8, 9, 10 is when adults start to really formalize their kids' play.
Yeah.
And so you will find there will be less kids around for play dates. There are less kids running around the neighborhood riding bikes because it is the time where parents do jump in and start to formalize, and there very much is a messy middle. So
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to take that and I'm going to sit with it, because now I kind of want to see if I can come up with a different approach, knowing that he has his whole life ahead of him. He'll figure something out. But it sounds like he's very similar to your son. He also really likes to tinker with things, take things apart. He loves aviation. We're actually going to be taking a trip up to DC for spring break to go to Virginia to see that aviation museum. And yeah, I'll probably have to talk to you some more after this.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Can you please tell us more about your book? Who is it for? And what are they going to get out of reading it or even listening to it? I'm assuming it's on Audible?
And I read the audiobook myself, which was like, I was so nervous, and I'm so glad I did it. So my book is for parents ages 2 to 12, although interestingly enough, so many grandparents, caregivers, early childhood teachers have all come to me and said, you need to market this book for us too, because it really teaches you how to understand who your child is as a person who plays. What are their interests? What lights them up? How can you connect with them? And the result of that is rich, independent play. And, I created this book so that busy parents could really go into the index, look up, like, what are you struggling with right now, and start to implement that. Because as busy parents, a lot of us don't have time to sit down and listen to a whole book or read a whole book. So when I was writing this, it was really important to me for parents to access what they needed in that moment.
I love that. You are so mom friendly.
Well, I am a mom and I get it.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. So if people listening want to connect and learn more from you, where can they connect with you?
Sure. You can always find me on my website, workspaceforchildren.com, on Instagram and Substack.
Love it. I love it. Okay. If you know someone that could benefit from listening to this episode, please share this with them. Okay. I mean, I don't know any parent who wouldn't want to know how to handle the infamous phrase, like, I'm bored, come play with me. So please spread the message. Let your friends know about her book and about Lizzie so they can learn more about how they can get more of their free time back and also support their child's upbringing in a really wholesome way that develops them into who we want them to be, right? We all want kids who grow up to be responsible members of society, who are part of the community and just kind people. So go check her out, follow her on Instagram, go grab her book or listen to her audiobook. And if you love this show, thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate you listening to the show. Please consider leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That's what helps this show grow and helps more people like you get the help they need. Thank you so much, Lizzie, for being on the show, and I'll catch you all back here on the next episode. Bye. That's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you did, please send me a message over on Instagram at Michelle Perta Coaching to let me know what you loved most about it. Hearing from my listeners is my absolute favorite. And if you've been loving this podcast, please leave a rating and review. This will help people like you find the show and get the help they need. Catch you here on the next episode. Bye.